Vladimir Guerrero Jr. finally came through on his upside in 2021. Let's take a closer look at the first base position next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5. As always, make sure to follow and stream us on Spotify. Today is Thursday, October 14th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White. And you can find Scott's first base ranks for 2022 currently live on the site, cbssports.com/fantasy/baseball. And let's start with the top 6 at the position. Vladimir Guerrero, no surprise there. 48 home runs, massive season for him. Freddie Freeman, rock solid, early second round pick. You know what you're going to get. And then Matt Olson, Paul Goldschmidt, Max Muncy, Pete Alonso. That rounds out the top 6 here. I want to focus on Paul Goldschmidt, Scott, because he had this renaissance season, and the underlying numbers, StatCast data, it was better than ever before. This guy used to be a first-round pick. Where do you settle in on Paul Goldschmidt for next year?
Well, he is my 4th-ranked first baseman, so I'm not giving him full credit for the season he had. He was a top 12 roto player this past year, right? And a lot of it had to do with him stealing 12 bases. Stealing bases was something he did in the prime of his career. You know, going back to 2017 was the last time he performed like a first-round bat. And, you know, stealing 15, 20 bases a year, that was something Paul Goldschmidt did. But we hadn't even seen him steal double-digit bases in the past few years. And I don't know if that's something we can count on him doing again next year. His sprint speed, he's only in the 34th percentile for sprint speed. It doesn't take much to set you apart in that category at this position. There aren't many base stealers there, but I don't think we can count on that carrying over for Goldschmidt. I do think, you look at the underlying numbers, there's nothing that really contradicts what he did. So I'm hopeful that he can continue to perform like a high-end bat at the position. Obviously, age 34, he's getting up there in years, but I'm hopeful that it was mostly legitimate this past season.
Matt Olson, you have 3rd at first base. You have Pete Alonso 6th at the position. And I don't want to disparage anything that Matt Olson did this past year because he made huge improvements. Strikeout rate against left-handed pitching, he was fantastic. But in the second half, Pete Alonso actually had a better batting average, a better OPS than Matt Olson. So I say all of this. If you're getting Alonso at 2 or 3 rounds discount compared to Matt Olson in 2022, I will have a lot of Pete Alonso next year. What do you think, Scott?
I think that's probably fair. If it's a difference of 3 rounds, I think that's especially true in 5x5 leagues where the home run output, the RBI output, maybe even the batting average is probably going to be similar between those two, Olson and Alonso. I think in points leagues it's different because Olson gets on base at a much higher rate than Alonso does, and the strikeout rate. They both saw a big improvement in strikeout rate this past year, but Olson's was even lower. Points per game this past year, Olson was at 3.62. Alonso was at 3.16. That's a pretty big difference. But yeah, if you're talking about just the traditional 5x5 categories, I'm not sure there's 3 rounds of separation there. Probably the category Olson is going to outperform Alonso the most is runs scored because of that disparity in on-base percentage.
7 through 12 in your first base ranks for next year. Jose Abreu, Joey Votto, Jake Cronenworth, CJ Cron, Rhys Hoskins, and Josh Bell. The 2 names I want to focus on here, Joey Votto has this huge bounce-back season this past year. More power, slugging than we've ever seen before. And Rhys Hoskins hit 27 home runs in just over 100 games. He dealt with an injury which basically forced him to miss the final 2 months of the season. But, Scott, what do you think about Joey Votto? Are you buying in? It'll be his age 38 season for next year. And what about Rhys Hoskins? Like, why can't he be Max Muncy, at a discount?
Okay, so Votto, obviously we thought we were done with him as a high-end performer in fantasy 3 years in a row. The production just wasn't there, but he was very intentional about changing his approach at the plate, realized that he couldn't get away with selling out for contact like he did in that near MVP 2017 season. He wasn't strong enough to hit for that kind of power unless he sold out for power a little more. So the strikeout rate went up, but not nearly as much as the power production went up in his in this past season. And I think at age 38, now that he's figured that out, as long as he stays healthy, I'm willing to trust in him as my starter again. Hoskins, good on base skills. Obviously, he got shut down for the season with abdominal surgery, but the production was looking great before then. He was red hot at the time he got shut down, and I think there are some similarities there with Muncy. The power output hasn't been quite at Muncy's level for a full season, and I do think Muncy has a better chance of hitting for average because he doesn't strike out as much. But I would buy Hoskins as a poor man's Max Muncy, sure.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like a bad thing. I don't know. I like Rhys Hoskins. I'm thinking I'm gonna have a lot of him for next year. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, your smart speakers, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. If you enjoyed the pod, please leave a 5-star review on Apple. We'll be back again on Tuesday morning. Bye-bye.